My name is Willy Jansen, and I was born in a very small village in the east of the Netherlands. And I was the second one of a family with 7 brothers, so you can already imagine what my destination was, is work in the house and help my mother. And from the very beginning I resisted this destination, and I just wanted to read and get out of the village, and how could I escape the village. And luckily my father had been frustrated because he had grown up on a farm and was supposed to work on the farm, and he had also wanted to study more, but that wasn't possible, so he wanted to create for us the opportunity. And that started when I was in 6th grade of primary school. Then he sent first my oldest brother and then me to the sisters in town. And that was quite exceptional. Both the headmaster and the priest came to complain why he didn't appreciate the village school. But I was very happy because I came to this sister school, and Sister Andrea, the head a nun, she discovered that I was way behind, and so the next day already she told me to come a half an hour early, and from that day on every day she taught me private lessons for half an hour extra. And also she provided the role models. The first Dutch woman minister of social affairs had gone to school there, so when they opened a new building she was invited, and we were taught as girls that there was another destination than work for the family at home as a housewife. And another thing was that she had the authority to tell my father where I would be going to secondary school. She just told him, Willy is going there, and that's how it went. So I went to secondary school, and then another good thing happened. My father decided to buy a small vegetable store in The Hague and bring his whole family of 10 people to live in a 3-room apartment, much to the dislike of my mother, because she not only lost her nice house, but she also had to work in the store and take care of the 8 children, and you know, lost all her friends and everything. But she managed, and I was so happy, because this was for me the great escape from the village. And the town offered me everything. I could learn how to swim, I could go to the movies, and so I really enjoyed it. And then when I finished, somehow university was not in mind at all. It was not part of the culture of our family, especially not for girls, and it was something of another class and something too costly to think of. But I couldn't imagine myself going to start work, so what I did is I was looking at the boards in the school, and they offered a AFS scholarship to America. So I applied for the scholarship to America, and I got it, to my big surprise, because when my father had brought me to the embassy for the application procedure and for the interview, they had asked me, would you also like to go to Russia? And I simply said, I would love to, you know, anywhere I can go, I would love to go. And when I came out, he said, oh, no, you won't get the scholarship, because they really only want you to go to America. But I got the scholarship, and it was wonderful, because it was the first big trip abroad for me. And not only that, I came in a small town, and actually all the groups in town had worked for me to raise money for this foreign student. So they expected me to give talks for the Boy Scouts and the Parent-Teacher Association and the Rotary and whatever to talk about the Netherlands. And so I did, and people came up to me and said, I want to give you something too. So I'm a piano teacher. Do you want piano lessons? And someone else offered me their sailboat to learn sailing. And I said yes to everything. And I had a very loving family I stayed with, and I have kept in contact with them until now. And unfortunately, both parents died last year, but still they have been great to me. But the good thing about this whole experience was that I learned that you can go alone into the world and be accepted and make new friends, start a totally new life in a situation where nobody knows anything about you, and that people are nice to you. So this gives self-confidence to know that everywhere you can find people who are nice to you and who will welcome you. So whatever other problems I had of learning to speak English and everything, it was nothing compared with this positive experience. And then I had to go back home, and still somehow university wasn't on my mind, strangely enough. And that also was a reason, because my father had fallen ill, and the only thing that he had to contribute to my stay in America was my pocket money every week. And he had taken out a loan to pay that. And I could not live with this idea of him having a debt because of me, so I started working as a secretary. And I worked as a secretary for 2 years until I was fed up with that. And I had, done all these things, getting my typing diploma, shorthand, business correspondent, English, German, French. And there was something missing. But still this problem, 6 years of university, at that time it was still 6 years, and the money, and my parents weren't very supportive either. My mother could just not understand why I would give up a good job as a secretary, and my father said, well, go ahead if you want to study, but I can't pay for it, so you have to make sure you find your own money, because I don't have any money for it. And so I picked a sort of professional college for a 2-year college. That seemed perfect to me. When I sent in my request for information, they sent me a very sexist letter back. Do not apply, because girls are not finding jobs if you follow this this college. So, well, they shouldn't tell me, because that's really, not. My first reaction was, I'll show them I can get in. And I did get in, but then the director called me, and he said, you got in, congratulations, but I advise you not to come. And I said, why not? Yeah, because you're the type that will go to the university anyway afterwards, and then you lose 2 years. And I said, I come and see you, because this is not an easy decision to make. So I went to Breda, it was, and I talked to him, and I talked to the psychologist who had done the screening, and I said, yeah, but see, the point is I like too many things, I don't know what to choose. And he said, well, why don't you study sociology of developing countries? I said, well, that should be interesting. So at that moment I switched, and then the week later I called the university and I said, I want to go to do development studies, and they said, you can't, because it's only a master. So you have to do either sociology or anthropology. And that was about the first time I heard about anthropology. And I said, well, everyone is doing sociology, so sign me up for anthropology. And I remember that that summer we went hitchhiking to Italy, and someone picked us up and said, what are you doing? And I said, I'm studying anthropology. I've never. And then he said, you must have heard of Margaret Mead and Ruth Benedict. And I said, well, I think I'm just starting. Haven't heard of them yet. But somehow when I started, that was a month before I started studying anthropology. And then the first class in anthropology, they showed a movie. And the movie, probably it was Chagnon with the Yanomamo, the very first movie they ever made. And I recognized it because I'd seen it on television the month before, and I had sat with my family and I had thought, oh, that was something that I would love to do. And then seeing this movie in class and thinking, oh, somehow I got the discipline where you study to do this thing that I always wanted to do. And I felt so very much at home then. So this was it. This was what I had always wanted to do, but never knew it existed. It didn't have a name. And so I really felt at home, and ever since have thought this was the greatest discipline that you can ever study. And I loved it. My main mentor and supervisor was Anton Blok. And Anton Blok, he came, I think, the second year I was doing anthropology. And he was specialized in the Mediterranean, and he wanted to historicize anthropology. And he wrote this book, The Mafia of a Sicilian Village. What was it, 18 something? 1860 to 1960. And this title is interesting because it shows his interest. It shows his interest in history, in the Mediterranean, but also in conflict and power. And so he has given me a large doses of that in his teaching of me, because when he was developing the course Historicizing Anthropology, he asked me to be his student assistant. And I had to collect literature and write papers about that, and that was very interesting. And he also used historians, like he made us read Emmanuel Leroy-Laduries' book Montaillou, and Carlo Ginzburg's The Cheese and the Worms, and on the basis of archives on the prosecution of the Catars, they could give a whole idea about the community of a village. So suddenly the village became important again, and was interesting to study with only a little with only some archives. Another book he gave us to read was William Christian's Person and God in the Spanish Village. And that was interesting because it was done by a historian, but very much based on anthropological fieldwork in northern Spain. And later on we had a lot of contact with Bill, who wrote this book. At the same time, as I said, I had been hitchhiking with my brother, and we also went to North Africa in that summer before I started anthropology, and I was fascinated by all the calligraphy at the mosques and the other buildings. And I still have a water jug where some student painted Tunis on, and we bought it for 85 cents on the market in Tunis, and hitchhiked 2,000 kilometers with it home. And I had the idea, well, if I study anthropology, then I also should study a language that is not a European language, that has a different script and a different grammar. So from the very beginning, I started with Arabic as a minor. And And then, yeah, you had, only that was only later that I also had to take Turkish when I changed it from a minor to a major. So that's how I started Arabic. But once you invest so much time and effort in learning a language, then you have to do something with it. So it nearly automatically, when time came to find a place for field research for my master research, I thought of the North African or the Middle East region. And first I went to Lebanon because I thought Lebanon, that was the next holiday. We always used the holidays to travel a lot and hitchhike. And although in the Middle East we took the bus, but not hitchhiked. And we went to Lebanon, and in Lebanon, what I found interesting was the Palestinian refugees, but also how after a period of conflict, women come out if they have opportunities or if they have no opportunities at all. So how the gender relations changed. And there we talked to students, and they said, well, don't come because we're living on a volcano. And right enough, the next year, when it was time to do my research, it erupted into the civil war. So I had to change and find another place. And I thought, well, Algeria fought a war of independence. I might go there because very few people do go to Algeria. And actually, we had organized master researchers at our university. They either went to Spain or to Ireland, but you could also do individual research. So I prefer to individual research. But then Algeria was quite difficult to get a permit for, and so in the end I teamed up with two researchers from Amsterdam because they had permission to do research on the agrarian revolution, which was quite a topic at that time. So I ended up in a resettlement village, newly built, and in the Souf, in the east of Algeria. And normally they grow date palms in huge sand pits, and they make the sand pits to reach the water carrying layer on the bottom, and spend their whole life getting all the sand out of the sand pit to safeguard their palm trees. But in this a new village, the palm trees were planted on the surface and irrigated by water from artesian wells, which had other problems of salination of the earth and all those. But I was especially interested in women and how women managed to do in this resettlement, what they thought about living there and starting a new life. And so that was my first fieldwork experience, and I wrote, of course, a master thesis about that. Let me see what else. The problems. You wanted to know about problems I had in the field. Well, I'll tell you. It already started the very first day when I arrived in Algeria. It was the time before Booking.com and Airbnb, and in travel books I'd only found one hotel which I just couldn't afford because it was too expensive for government officials, but I had some addresses with me, I remember, of kind of youth organizations or youth hostels or student hostels, and I made sure I arrived in daytime, and I went to find all these addresses. Well, it was a big disappointment. They were for youth, all right, but one was a youth restaurant and the other one was the student organization, and the fourth one was the Ministry of Youth and Education. And no, they couldn't provide me with a room, and it was getting a little bit darker already, so I was getting scared. But then one of these people in the hall said he knew there was much talking, and he knew a nice hostel for young ladies, so he would bring me. Well, sure enough, I ended up in his room, his apartment, and he just couldn't understand that I did not want to sleep in his bed. So in the end, I found myself in a pitch dark street in Algiers, not knowing where I was, because maps. I searched for a year for a map of Algiers, and I just couldn't find it until I discovered there was a map in a book. And then I went to all the libraries, and it turned out that they'd ripped all the specific books, they'd ripped out the map to have a map. So I had no map with me, and I was there in dark. So what you do, it was pitch dark, because it gets dark very early. So I walked in the direction of some lights, and then I ended up in a shopping street with all filled with men looking at me, hissing at me, and and I walked and walked and didn't see a hotel or anything that looked like it. So finally I decided, I looked at two boys who looked like students, and I approached them and said, well, could you help me? Because I'm looking for a hotel and I can't find a hotel. So they helped me. And then one hotel, two hotels, three hotels, they didn't want me. At the fourth hotel, I said, I saw them discussing, with the hotel owner. I said, what's wrong? And they said, well, see, all these hotels are for men, and they only rent out beds. They don't rent out rooms, because if they rent out a room to you, they can't sell the other beds. I said, I don't care. I'll rent 4 beds for the night. So that's what I did. They convinced the owner that for one night at least he could rent out a room for me. And then the next day they came back and they helped me again to find another hotel, and I did the same, rent 4 beds in order to be able to sleep. And so that was quite something. So the next time when I came back for my second research, I thought I should be prepared. So I had asked a colleague who frequently came in Algeria, and I said, where are you staying? And he said, yeah, I know a nice place in the center, Madame Gresh. And so I used official university paper. I wrote Madame Gresh, please, could I reserve a room from that and that on? She answered me, okay, you can come. And then when I arrived there and I struggled up the 4 flights with my heavy suitcase, she opened the door and then she said, we don't rent out to women. And I said, yeah, but I have a letter here saying that I could come. Yes, she said, but I thought you're a man. And I said, yeah, but I'm not a man. Can I at least stay for a few nights? Okay, finally I convinced her that I was a decent woman, and she let me in, because she had promised I could stay there. But so these are some of the problems that you encounter as a woman doing field work and plain thing. And yeah.
So that was for your master?
And that's also my name, because my name is difficult. In the Netherlands, it's a joking name for the king. In Germany, it's a man's name, and abroad too. In America, they're really shocked because it's the male organ. So I have to change my name. So I am either Guillermina, Wilhelmina, or in the Arab world, I say, well, just call me Mina, because there really is a word that they use to mourn someone. So also not a pleasant connotation. And so that was another minor problem. Okay.